There's a lot of Super Bowl talk surrounding Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens right now, and a former NFL quarterback made a bold prediction about the next great quarterback in the NFL to win a championship. We talk about that, some Ravens extension talk, and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here. A little midweek edition of the show on Locked On Ravens, and thanks for making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Free and available for you on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts 5 days per week here on Locked On Ravens is the main show. Plus, we have so many other things going on here, including live shows after every single Ravens game and every single piece of Ravens big news. We got some bonus episodes on the weekend sometimes. The new edition, the Ravens Squad Show, is live every Monday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So thanks out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners, and if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And speaking of the Ravens Squad Show, we have Sam Njoku of the Ravens Squad Show and, of course, the Ravens Talk Podcast. Sam, rookies reported yesterday. It's a glorious feeling to know that these guys are back in the building. Now, the party doesn't really start till the vets come back, right? That is next week on Tuesday. But still, we're checking off those boxes, and football, every day we get closer to week one, you smell the grass, the concessions at the stadium, the bright lights at M&T Bank. It's getting closer, man. I'm excited.
Football players are in the building at Owings Mills. That's good enough for me, at least for now. Obviously, as you mentioned, when the vets come in, it gets ramped up a little bit, but it's good to know that at least the young pups are in the building getting ready for the 2025 season. So I'm very excited for it. Hopefully the Ravens are doing all they can to get over that hump. That's been the conversation throughout the offseason. It'll continue to be that conversation until they actually do so. So very excited to see where this team heads, and it starts with the rookies.
Yeah, it does. And we know the impact they got from Roger Rosengard and Nate Wiggins last year. They're hoping to get that again from their top two picks in Malaki Starks and Mike Green. We'll get to the rookies a little bit more as the show goes on. But Sam, I want to start off here with the, like you mentioned, consistent talk around Baltimore right now, which is they have a great roster. That is true. They have a great quarterback. That is true. And with that comes a lot of high expectations, and they unfortunately have not been able to deliver on those the past handful of years. I think we're in agreement, Sam. They've had three really good chances to win the Super Bowl in the Lamar Jackson era in 2019, 2023, and 2024. They've come up short without even an appearance in the Super Bowl to show for it. But the conversation around Lamar Jackson is, hey, when is he going to win that championship? Is he going to be the next great quarterback to do it? And so over on First Take, former NFL quarterback Dylan Orlovsky, it was a segment they were doing on there, and the topic of it was, who wins the Super Bowl next? Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, or Joe Burrow? And Dan Orlovsky picked Lamar Jackson as the guy over Mahomes, over Allen, and over Burrow. And Sam, his reasoning, he said, quote, "I'm going Lamar. It's the third year in a row where we've said that's the best team. This is the best roster in the NFL outside of Philadelphia. His offensive line is going to be top three. Lamar's coming off arguably his best season in the NFL. Their perimeter players are fantastic. One of the things that was part of the storyline that isn't talked about enough is Zay Flowers being out of that playoff game was absolutely massive." He goes on to say, quote, "It has to be Lamar. The next guy for me would be Josh. I don't think Josh's team is as good as Baltimore." So I want to break this down with you here. I think this is a dangerously good bold prediction from Dan Orlovsky. I like this. Maybe he saw what happened to Emmanuel Acho over at the facility. And we know that Dan was a big Josh Allen guy last year. He said, hold on, let me take a step back here. Lamar, you're the guy again. So, yeah, we know that Josh was the MVP last year, contrary to, I think, what actually should have happened. I know you and I, Sam, are in agreement on that. But all these quarterbacks have a great shot to win it. Do you agree that out of those four, with where the teams are set right now and where the quarterbacks are in their careers and how they're performing, do you agree with Dan that Lamar is going to be the next quarterback out of those four to win?
Absolutely. And good on Dan. Hot takes for the sake of hot takes is finally over. Hopefully we'll see. But it's good to see that, Dan is coming to the light in regards to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. The Ravens have the best team out of the four. I call them the big four in Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, of course, Lamar Jackson. Lamar has the best chance to win it. He is the best quarterback, at least the best player who has played the best over the last 2 seasons, in my opinion. So he, of course, would get the nod for me as having the best chance to be the next great quarterback to win a championship. And then Josh Allen will be next. I think Joe Burrow, as great as he is, and I think that, in my opinion, he's the second best quarterback in the league next to Lamar Jackson. I think that, that defense is just not equipped to win a championship. And with the whole thing with Shamar Stewart, we don't even know Shamar Stewart. Shamar Stewart's back in college. We don't know even what's going on with Shamar Stewart. He might not even be a Bengal this year. He might be a Raven next year with the way things are going with the Bengals front office. So let's chew on that for a little bit. But yeah, the Bengals don't really have the defense. Josh Allen doesn't really have the talent around him, the likes of which Lamar has with the Ravens. And of course, we talked about what Patrick Mahomes has, the holes that he has over there. So it's never been a better chance for the Ravens to get it done than this year. It's good to see that the national media is starting to catch up to what we've all known to be the case since the Ravens got their DB in the first round of this past draft, and Mike Green out of Marshall. So everything's looking good for the Ravens right now. Stay healthy, stay the course. Do not make the mistakes you made early last season, which is losing games you should win. Get that 1 seed, get home field advantage, and you have a really, really, really good chance of going to the Super Bowl.
I think this is how these conversations should be had. It is about the quarterback because they're the star of the team, but it truly is a team thing, right? Where high expectations on the Ravens, right? Is this a failure for the Ravens? Is the Ravens season a failure if they don't win the Super Bowl? I'd say this year, yeah. But to pin all that on Lamar Jackson, because you mentioned it with Joe Burrow, it's like that's a perfect example here. Joe Burrow is incredible. He's an awesome quarterback, and I think that if he had a competent defense around him and other players besides just him, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins on that team, because right now I don't really know what to do with Trey Hendrickson, so I'm not going to include him. Like, without those guys, the Bengals don't really have anything. Like, it is a team sport. And yes, the quarterbacks will always have that weight on their shoulders of they're going to get the blame and they're going to do this and like everything happens there. But it should be not which quarterback is going to win the Super Bowl next, which team is going to win the Super Bowl next. And I think Lamar Jackson is in the best situation for that. And the reason I kind of call it a dangerously bold prediction here in a good way is because I think that Dan is correct in the fact that we have been saying this about the Ravens. I wouldn't necessarily say, 2023, we knew that they had a good shot. I think everybody expected that defense to be good, but they were historic level that year. And everybody anticipated they were going to be better, right, than they were Lamar Jackson. But the big question there was, could Lamar stay healthy? I remember that in 2023, where Lamar had missed back end of 2021, the back end of 2022. I don't think people were coming into that year being like, oh, the Ravens unquestioned Super Bowl favorites, yada, yada, yada. I think the question for them was they can be really, really good, but could Lamar stay healthy? 2024, yeah, Lamar coming off the MVP. They were in that conversation, and this year they're even more so in that conversation, but it is a team sport. Now, the thing I do not agree with from Dan here is that the offensive line for Baltimore is going to be top 3. I don't see it, Dan. I don't see it. Look, Tyler Linderbaum, Roger Rosengarten, Ronnie Stanley, those are your guys. If they can stay healthy and on the field, you feel really good about them. That guard spot, though, is the weakest part on the team to me right now. Hopefully, Daniel Falele and Andrew Voorhees, who I'm just going to assume are going to win those jobs, they have to step up. I think they can be a good offensive line if everything breaks their way. Top 3, there's a lot that would have to break their way, Sam, in order to have that be a reality. Where are you on the offensive line right now? Is this a top 3 material unit to you right now?
I think Dan took too many shots at the purple Kool-Aid. I think he took one too many shots. He got amped up with the Lamar Jackson praise and, Ravens Super Bowl and took one too many shots of that purple Kool-Aid. No, this offensive line has not proven to me, at least, that they could be a top 3 offensive line. They do have the talent now. Let's not get it twisted. There's a reason why John Harbaugh and company are high on Voorhees and Falele. Have they put it together for 16 games? They even put it together for 3 straight games, those two. So that's the question. We know the floor is low for these two, but we know the ceiling is extremely high. Could they take that next step? It would have to be a gigantic step from year 1 to year 2 for these guys. We know that Falele has shown some flashes. Same with Voorhees, especially that Week 18 game. I always go back to that Week 18 game against the Browns where he played extremely well. Can he take that next step, be more consistent, not be a liability during pass rushing situations where you know that these defensive coordinators are going to have you fooled with stunts and what have you? Can they keep keep their toe on the line. Don't make the mistake with the stunts, and do not, get fooled by these plays, and be agile, but also be powerful. We know they're both big, powerful guys that can push the line ahead. And it's going to work wonders for Derrick Henry and company. But when it comes to protecting their quarterback, when it comes to doing things, in some cases, even run blocking has suffered a little bit because they are asked to pull a lot in this offensive scheme. No matter whichever way you slice it, having the confidence to stay top 3 offensive line, I will not say it, but they do have the talent. They do have the potential. Would I be totally surprised they didn't make that jump? Not really, but last year was definitely a struggle. A lot of it was masked because the magic of Lamar Jackson and the power of Derrick Henry kind of overshadowed some of the discrepancies and misfortunate, situations. But they can make that jump this year. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think Rashod Bateman put it best here, Sam. Lamar Jackson, he gives people jobs and he saves people's jobs. And you and I, we talked about that recently. It's where Lamar, with that offensive line, we mentioned it on the squad show. There is not a singular quarterback in this league that can evade pressure and make something happen out of nothing than Lamar Jackson. So again, I think that the dangerous part in Dan's prediction here comes from the fact that it's attaching Lamar's name to winning a Super Bowl, and it's Lamar's fault if they lose, and this, that, and the other. Where again, not that it matters, honestly, Sam, but I just feel like if they win, this team was great, and the Ravens team is awesome, and look at all these great guys. If they lose, Lamar. So that to me is, I think, where I want to have the conversation shift to, yes, can the Ravens be the next team to win the Super Bowl, right? With Lamar included in that. And coming up, we're going to finish our conversation about this and really evaluate where the Ravens roster is in terms of talent compared to the other big 4 teams. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel's the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. And I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm a part of the action. Speaking of baseball, this being Locked On Ravens, I am an Orioles guy. Hasn't been a great year for the Orioles. 9 under 500 at the All-Star break. The Orioles World Series odds on FanDuel right now, plus 32,000. So maybe you're feeling spicy about the Orioles. You wanted to get in on that action. You can do it over on FanDuel. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku still talking with you here. Sam, this Ravens team, I think we know is the best in football outside of Philadelphia, and people even put them ahead of Philadelphia, depending on who you ask. I think it's really intriguing to look at the AFC side of this, because you mentioned the big 4 quarterbacks and Lamar, Joe, Josh, and Patrick Mahomes there. Where do you think the actual level is? Like, how much further ahead is Baltimore compared to whoever your second-rated roster is, whether that's Buffalo, Kansas City, or Cincinnati? Is this like a massive, massive gap to you, or do you think that there is just a little bit of space in between each one, but Baltimore happens to be the best roster?
They're a tier above the rest. They're clearly the tier 1 of this AFC group, and then tier 2 you'll have teams like the Bills and maybe the Kansas City Chiefs eke their way in there. I like the Broncos a little bit as well. But as far as composite team, best team, the Ravens are clearly tier 1. It's not like the quarterbacks where you have 1 through 4 and you can switch them up wherever you want, have some fun with some content creation. The Ravens are clearly the best team in the AFC. Then a step below, you have the others who are fighting for that 2 spot. But yeah, the Ravens 100% best team in the AFC. I think it's a sizable gap, but it doesn't mean that they're going to obviously win the Super Bowl, but I think they have clearly the best team in the AFC.
I think the big factor here to me, or at least one of them, is the fact that even the people who criticize Lamar for his playoff losses, Sam, I'm not sure they could even name the teams he's beaten in the playoffs. And that's just not a part of their story. It's only the negative. And that to me is not how you should evaluate anybody, right? You have to factor in the full story, and that includes, hey, did your teammates perform well? Did your coaching staff make the right decisions? And then, yes, I think it's a perfect example. Lamar deserves criticism for his first half against the Bills, right? That's fair criticism, right? There was miscommunication, the fumble, like they didn't start. And look, the defense didn't do him any favors either, and that's another part of the story. But Lamar was a part of it. But then, as you mentioned in the second half, he did everything that he could to make up for those mistakes. They obviously fell short at the end. But I want to see the full picture here before declaring, oh, it's this person or that. We don't know what's going to happen this season. If they win it, awesome. If they don't, we need to have a conversation about what happened in the game, not just, oh, the quarterback is the star, it's all his fault, right? And I think that's the unfortunate debate that we see surrounding Lamar often, but not around the other quarterbacks. It's like Lamar is put in his own conversation category, and the other guys get, their pass. But there are other factors to think about, Sam, with Lamar Jackson. One of them is the extension for him. We know that the Ravens have a lot of extension candidates, with Lamar, I think, being the biggest one. And Jess Rebeck at The Athletic put out an article mentioning his storylines about Ravens training camp. Obviously, the rookies reported, as we talked about yesterday, and the vets are coming in next Tuesday. And Jeff here kind of talked about extensions for these guys. Lamar Jackson is going to have a $70+ million cap hit next year. So this is not like Lamar's in a contract year like last time and they have to figure something out, franchise tag. I mean, that was I don't even want to think about it. It was so exhausting for that amount of time. But this is different to where a restructure or an extension, hopefully extension, it has to be on the table, especially with how many guys the Ravens have to sign. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes. But Sam, if somehow something doesn't happen with Lamar, if the Ravens and Lamar can't agree to an extension, nothing to their liking, and that cap hit, they actually keep that on their roster next offseason, is there anything they can do with that? Or do you think that it is like absolutely imperative there is no shot that he's going to go without some form of a restructure and extension before March of next year?
Oh, yeah, it's going to get restructured or extended. There's literally no way. No GM in the history of the National Football League will be okay with that high of a price tag. That does mean that Lamar Jackson does have a lot of leverage in this situation. It is what it is. And Lamar Jackson is going to be a Raven. He's connected with the Ravens. The Ravens love him. Blah, blah, blah. We've heard the nuance before. This marriage isn't going anywhere. It's just a matter of getting the numbers right and getting this extension done. They could void the years and push this back a little bit, but the Ravens would be more inclined to get an extension done. The market's set. You know who just got paid. You know what the numbers look like. Pay him a little bit more than that. Play the game. Get him on the field and do what you have to do. So I'm sure the Ravens aren't concerned with it. You might want to get the extension done now rather than wait until the next year to get it done when the cap does increase exponentially. But there's really no hurry. The rosters right now is pretty good. They could give themselves some relief and do the extension now and maybe get in another big guy. But we're already talking about the Ravens having the best roster in the league. There's really no pressure on Eric DeCosta right now to do it. He does have some time to get it done. No way this doesn't get voided or extension reach for Lamar Jackson. It's going to happen. I would rather have an extension done. But either way, that cap will not be a factor in 2026. There's no way they can function as a franchise with that cap hit. You'll have to throw the whole thing away, and that's not a good sign if you're a Ravens fan.
$74.5 million is the exact number. And Jeff Rebeck wrote in his article, and this is, pretty common knowledge, that most of these contract talks are tabled once the regular season starts. We saw that happen the last time Lamar and the Ravens were trying to work something out. So just about 2 months to get something done, a little under that now for something to happen before, of course, you don't want to have that whole thing lingering over you while you're trying to win a championship. But Jeff ends up talking about that, if that cap number ends up becoming a thing, it's nearly impossible for Baltimore to keep the nucleus of its roster together. And Jackson will have even more leverage in the contract talks with each passing month. And I remember, Sam, you and I talked about this probably a month or two ago about, which side has more leverage, where are you with that now? Because it's been a little bit since we talked about it. Do you agree that with each passing month, Lamar's going to get more and more of that leverage to say, hey, I know you cannot operate with my cap hit being that high. You have to extend me. And you saw the deal Josh Allen just got. Do you agree with Jeff there in terms of Lamar's leverage grows by the month?
Oh, yeah, it's Lamar's show. I mean, we're all waiting on Lamar. Eric DeCosta's waiting on Lamar. And he can just say, nope, I'm good. I mean, this guy's getting paid a great amount of money. He is in no obligation to the franchise to to sit there and say, okay, I'll just take your best deal you got and let's keep it moving. He can hold off as long as he wants to. I'm not sure it is really a good reason for him to do that. I'm sure there might be nuances to the contract that he needs to work on, but the market's the market. I expect him to sign the deal whenever, everything gets put on the table. People don't like to talk about this, but obviously not having an agent does make this a little more difficult because Lamar Jackson is enjoying his offseason, enjoying the fruits of his labor, the money that he gets. So getting him sitting into a table, getting him on the phone and talk to him is exponentially more difficult without an agent. But when it comes to getting an actual deal done, I'm still not concerned about it. I think that this deal gets done regardless. Lamar Jackson knows if he wants to be Tom Brady, which is what he said earlier in his career, he needs to have a nucleus around him to get the job done. Obviously, pigeonholing the Ravens with this cap hit will lose guys that are instrumental to him winning championships. So I'm not too concerned about it right now. I'm sure, Eric DeCosta is not losing too much sleep yet. But as the season approaches, then it becomes, okay, when are we going to get a chance to put money on the table for Lamar? Lamar's not going to want to talk about contracts during the season. Then it becomes the offseason, and then it gets scary because you're really closing in on free agency, and you got a lot of good players up for free agency for the Baltimore Ravens.
Yep, we'll see. And it is definitely a unique situation for Lamar not having an agent, and credit to him for being able to get that done the first time around. It worked. I know it, took a while to get there, and one trade request and, a bunch of proposals later, we finally got the news that Lamar was coming back to Baltimore and it was all over. But I think this was, and honestly, in that deal, I think, Sam, and we've talked about it, Lamar understood that, hey, that cap hit being that high, it'll get me up for another big deal a couple of years after I signed this one. I mean, I thought it, if that was the intention, beautifully played by Lamar Jackson there. So coming up in the final part of the show, obviously Lamar is not the only extension candidate. Sam and I have talked about there are a lot of other guys who deserve big contracts, and we'll talk about who Jeff Rebeck figures the Ravens are going to make a push for as well. As if Baltimore do they have too much talent right now? That's an intriguing conversation. All that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku still here with you. Sam, let's wrap up the conversation about the extensions. People are on pins and needles waiting for the next big extension. We obviously have talked about Isaiah Likely a ton. There's been numbers that have been floated around for him over the past week or so. We'll see if he's the next guy that gets a deal. Jeff Rebeck, in his article that I'm referring to here, again, this article coming from Jeff, the 10 biggest storylines entering training camp for the Ravens. Jeff says that the Ravens figure to make a push to extend Likely, Tyler Linderbaum, and Kyle Hamilton. Now, Hamilton is under contract through 2026, but Jeff notes that he is only going to get more expensive as arguably the league's best safety. And that is 100. I cannot tell you, Sam, how many times throughout that Lamar season when it was his contract year, every time he had a good game, I'm like, throw another $1 on top, throw another $5 million on top. Like, that is what it is. If you don't have these guys signed, especially in contract years, Hamilton is not there yet, but for a Linderbaum, who they declined the fifth-year option on, and Likely, good games, good showings, you're only increasing your value. And so I think it's important for them to at least try. Jeff's saying they're figuring to make a push, so who knows if they're actually doing that or not right now, but it makes sense. I mean, let's just talk about those three, Sam. Likely, Linderbaum, and Hamilton. Who do you think is the most important to get done out of those three to get them under contract and make sure you have them at a price point that you feel is comfortable for yourself if you're the Ravens and that the player feels comfortable with themselves?
Kyle Hamilton's number one. I mean, he's, in my opinion, and this might be a hot take, but I'm going to say it anyway, he's a top 10 player in this league. I mean, regardless of position, Kyle Hamilton is a top 10 player in this league. He's just so dynamic as a safety. He's so dynamic of what he does for this defense. And we talk about playing and getting millions on your contract. Let's not forget, this year, Kyle Hamilton's not going to be in the line of scrimmage like that. He's going to be in the back end playing deep safety. And those interceptions, and he's going to get interceptions, are going to tally up, and the numbers are going to increase and get higher and higher and higher. So you're going to definitely want to get Kyle Hamilton into a contract for the foreseeable future for sure. Kyle Hamilton is just no doubt about it. You got to get this guy signed. And I think the Ravens know that. They're going to make sure that they get the job done with Kyle Hamilton. But without question, bar none, Kyle Hamilton, you got to keep him in Baltimore. He is the face of your defense and the face of all defensive players in the National Football League, in my opinion.
Now, I'm going to ask you a tough question here. It's a question I don't want to ask, but it's my job to ask the tough questions. And I don't think this even happens anyway. So again, it's not maybe as tough if you know it's probably not going to happen. Who of those three do you think is the least likely to stay in Baltimore?
I think Isaiah Likely. I think Isaiah Likely will likely be, no pun intended, the one that, is going to be the hardest to get because, one, he is playing opposite Mark Andrews. The numbers will not dictate his value to the team. Tyler Linderbaum, I think he's going to be easier to sign. We know he's a center. They don't really command a lot of money, but we all know what he means to the organization. There's no doubt about it. They're going to get a deal done with the center. That's not a big deal. But Isaiah Likely, the numbers that I'm hearing circling around, the rumor mill, it's not even close to what he's going to command in free agency if he gets an opportunity. And because Mark Andrews is still on this field, opposite him, the number of opportunities are going to be limited. They may use it as ammunition during the talking process. If I was Isaiah Likely, I'd stand pat and wait until, I hit the open market. Unless I get a number that I really like, it just makes the most sense that Isaiah Likely will be a little bit more difficult to get under contract, which is a shame because, again, we talked about it all offseason. All three tight ends are in their contract year. They will have no tight ends under contract at the end of the season. That's a big problem for the Ravens in the foreseeable future.
Yeah. We'll see. It's kind of rare you have an entire positional group up for a contract after the year, especially one that is as talented as the Ravens tight end group. But we will see how they end up navigating that, which brings me, Sam, to the question of the final part of the show here, which is, do the Ravens have too much talent? And the quick answer, you and I will both say it's no, right? You can never have enough talent. That is the absolute, that's the best problem you can have. Bring in all the talent, bring in all the players. I don't care. But I want to approach it more so from the roster construction perspective about if there are going to be some tough decisions. We already know the answer to that question is yes, but they took 11 rookies. At that time, and you and I talked about it, it was always going to be tough to keep double-digit rookies on the roster, and that was before we knew Jaire Alexander was a possibility. And they drafted 2 rookie corners, probably under the assumption that they wouldn't get Jaire, they wouldn't have an opportunity, and now he is in the building. You have drafted 3 offensive linemen. That's going to be tough. We already don't have a spot for David Ojabo, at least on my roster. I don't have a spot for him right now. There are other tough decisions. Rasheen Ali is your guy. I'll give him another shout out for you. 3 or 4 running backs. I mean, the Ravens, do they have too much talent? The quick answer to that is no, you can never have enough, right? But do they have too much in terms of who they're going to be able to keep and not? Are we going to see some surprise roster cuts maybe we're not even talking about right now where we're going to be like, man, that's crazy. This guy's not on the roster. He's good. Do you see that coming?
Well, if you ask me or you, obviously the answer would be no. But if you ask the depth players on the Ravens, the answer would be absolutely. There's way too many guys on my back right now trying to take my job. So, yeah, it's a good problem to have, I guess, if you're the front office. But you're right. There's a lot of incoming talent. Look, we've got 11 drafted rookies, coming into the building on Tuesday, and even more undrafted free agents coming in. We know the Ravens routinely have 1 or 2 undrafted free agents make the roster. It's a good thing that the practice squad is the way it is, so you can kind of, push some of these guys into that category and get them ready for the upcoming, 2026 season. But yeah, there is a lot of good players on this team and not a lot of roster spots available. Think about how many players the Ravens actually lost this past offseason. Not many. And, there's just an influx of talent that's coming into. It's going to make preseason very interesting. It's going to make training camp very interesting. It's a good problem to have, again, if you're Eric DeCosta, but if you're one of those depth players that are fighting for a spot and you got 3rd-round draft pick guys over here, Teddy is over here trying to take my inside linebacker job, and you got corners scratching at the surface trying to get a job, and you talked about Rasheen Ali, you got running backs coming in as well. You're only as good as what you played last year. I mean, Rasheen Ali, didn't play the best, and there's other young guys coming out of college hungry for a shot. It's tough, but it is a National Football League, and you're fighting for a spot on the best team in the National Football League. So if you're a Ravens fan, you're excited about it, obviously. If you're content creators, if you're media like us, then you're very excited about it. But if you're those players, training camp is going to be very interesting because a lot of great talent is upcoming.
Yeah, and speaking of those rookies, guys will be fighting for spots, fighting for opportunities, and we had Mark Clayton on the Ravens Squad Show. So again, if you don't know what that is, it's a new addition to the Locked On Ravens. I'll call it the media empire here over at Locked On Ravens. So we're live Mondays and Thursdays. Sam and I, and also Qadri Ismail, former Ravens receiver and Super Bowl champion. We chop it up live for an hour every Monday and Thursday. But we had Mark Clayton on the show yesterday, and Mark talked about his experience as a rookie coming into his training camp for the first time. And I thought with the Ravens rookies reporting yesterday, I thought it was an awesome thing to be able to ask him. So, Sam, I want to play that clip from us. And then I want to ask you one more thing coming out on the other side. Now, the rookies, Mark, they're coming in tomorrow. And I want you to take me back to 2005. You're a rookie. You're coming into training camp for the first time. You're ready to contribute, make a name for yourself. I mean, can you take us back into like what that experience was like for you heading into that, meeting your teammates and continuing to build up to the season? Like, what's that like as a rookie?
Man, it is like, I mean, and I'm sure the guys have, because you just want to prove yourself amongst your peers. You just want to prove that you are that dude, like, and you want to make a name for yourself, especially guys that didn't get drafted or later round. Like, you just excited to have the opportunity to make a name for yourself, and then being the top guy, you want to make sure that they know they didn't waste that pick. And so me getting in there with the type of veteran leadership we had, Ray, Ed Reed, Prime was still there. Like, that was incredible. I mean, from Samari Rowe, Chris McAllister, Dale Carter, that vet, 13 years and up in the secondary with those positions, that was like football heaven for me, like going into as a receiver. And so it was, I was excited to get in and make my name really known and let them know that, I'm gonna be a contributor to the organization, and I want to be a part of what is giving us a chance to win championships.
So I want to ask you, Sam. Mark talked about excitement levels. I want to ask you about this rookie class. This is the rookie class you've been the most excited for since when? I can tell you're excited about them. So when is the last time you felt this excited about a Ravens rookie class coming in?
Man, for this group of great talent, it's been a minute. I've had some very exciting moments. Kyle Hamilton being drafted, dream scenario, did not expect it to happen. Zay Flowers, I always pegged him to be a Raven, so it was nice when the Ravens actually went ahead and got it. But man, I would have to go back and think. I would have to go maybe the Lamar Jackson, drafting Lamar Jackson in the first round, going back and getting him. I wasn't as high on Hayden Hurst as a lot of people, so a little disappointing first round for me, as an analyst and a fan. But to go back and get Lamar Jackson, who I thought was the best quarterback in that draft, and just snatch him up in the first round was very special. But this roster looks legit as far as the rookies coming in this year. 2 high-profile guys who I had in my top 15 coming into this draft, and Malaki Starks and Mike Green. Crazy. To this day, I still don't understand. I mean, I understand why Mike Green fell in the second round, but for them to be able to grab him in the second round, regardless, just based on talent alone, is insane. So I'm very excited for this group. I think they're, especially Green, who has a chance to be that premier pass rusher, something that the Ravens haven't had in a division full of pass rushers, even though 2 of them may not even be on their team in the upcoming season, and Trey Hendrickson and TJ Watt. You still, fear these guys when you see them on the calendar. So I think it's going to be a big deal for this rookie class. I think there's a lot of potential for impact. But again, we also talked about how this roster is already built for a championship. There may not be a lot of opportunities for some of the guys in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, but at least for those 2 guys specifically, and Malaki Starks and Mike Green, they have a chance to make an instant impact and be very dangerous for opposing teams.
Yeah, I love that 2022 class where, you got Hamilton and Linderbaum and all those guys, and Likely, Travis Jones. Like, that was crazy. Yeah. And then, 2018. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of the Hurst pick, but Lamar, that was Mark Andrews, Orlando Brown. Like, a lot of great, like, when the Ravens hit on drafts, they hit on drafts. Like, it is crazy. So I think it'll be awesome for the Ravens this year with their rookie class. Hopefully a lot of guys make those big impacts. But Sam, I appreciate you hopping on here. Thank you for joining me. On the way out, tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Well, you can find me on Ravens Talk Pod on Instagram and on Twitter. Right now, we're starting up the actual podcast. It'll be premiering in a couple of weeks, so be sure to tune in for that. We'll be talking all things Ravens as training camps get ramped up. Also, get on the Raven Squad show. We're live streaming every Monday and Thursday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We had Mark Clayton as a guest. We have Q along with us. Lots of guests coming up soon. We're going to have a lot of conversations regarding the training camp, so appreciate, again, all of the fans who are tuning in. We see all your comments, even though we don't get them displayed. rest assured, we see them and we talk about them after the show anyway. So definitely get your comments out there. We'd love to hear from you guys and see that the Ravens faithful are amped up for the season as much as we are.
Yeah, and all the links to Sam's work in the description down below. And be sure to check us out live Mondays and Thursdays on the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. And then you can also catch the regular Locked On Ravens show, which is still Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. So a lot of Ravens content coming your way on Locked On Ravens. But Sam, I appreciate you as always. And thank you to everybody who watched and listened to Locked On Ravens today. Coming up tomorrow, more Ravens coverage and content. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.